The silence following a conversation is rarely empty. It is often heavy with the things you are too careful to say. You've felt it, that precise moment where the exchange ended correctly on the surface, yet left a brutal reality hanging in the air, unnamed and cold. We are told that understanding is the result of study, but here is a harsh truth. Most men who obsessively study human nature end up understanding it less. By analyzing the male mindset through the lens of fear, you gradually replace the living person in front of you with a rigid theory of them. You came here seeking a map for silent power, a way to decode the hidden, but the map is not the territory. In fact, what you are about to learn is likely not what you came for. The patterns are there, but they are not where you've been taught to look.
The map in your pocket is old. It was sketched in the frantic, uncoordinated years of your youth, inked with the sting of a first rejection, the hollow advice of older men who were just as lost, and the filtered scripts of a culture that prioritizes winning over seeing. Most men carry this architecture into adulthood without ever questioning the foundation. They believe they are navigating the complexities of the male mindset with refined expertise. But the brutal reality is that they aren't interacting with the woman standing in front of them at all. They are interacting with a ghost, a calcified model of what they expect her to be. You've likely felt that consistent, low-level disappointment when an interaction doesn't go as planned. You assume the inconsistency lies with the subject, that women are unpredictable or layered in mystery. But the error isn't in the territory, it's in the map. The model is rigid, but the human experience is fluid. When you rely on a pre-drawn script, you aren't listening for truth. You are listening for a cue. Imagine a conversation that is actually going well. She says something unexpected. Perhaps she is being unusually warm, direct, or unguarded. A man operating from his internal map cannot receive this. He is already 3 moves ahead, calculating his next tactical shift to maintain silent power. There is a microbeat here, a cinematic fracture where he nods at her words, his eyes already glazed with the labor of his next response. She stops mid-sentence. She feels the sudden chill of his absence. He doesn't even notice she's stopped talking because he is still busy managing the narrative in his head. The conversation closes not with a bang, but with a quiet withdrawal. He walks away wondering what went wrong, never realizing he was never truly there to begin with. This internal architecture feels like intelligence. It feels like being prepared, like practicing dark psychology to stay ahead of the curve. In truth, it is a sophisticated form of hiding. By categorizing behavior before it even happens, you create a barrier. You aren't paying attention. You are performing a threat assessment. There is a harsh truth in the way we process what we perceive as a challenge to our ego. We do not observe what we fear. We monitor it. And monitoring is not the same as understanding. Monitoring is what a guard does to a prisoner. It is a clinical, detached observation designed to prevent surprise. When you monitor an interaction, you are looking for exits, for vulnerabilities, and for leverage. You are dressed in the costume of curiosity, but you are actually engaged in a defensive maneuver. The most sophisticated manipulation is the kind the victim defends long after it ends. And in this case, the victim is your own capacity for connection. You have spent years accumulating what you believe is knowledge, but you have actually been accumulating distance. Every tactic and every read is another brick in a wall that protects you from the discomfort of a genuine encounter. You aren't learning about her. You are simply reinforcing a structure that ensures you never have to meet her. The model isn't there to help you find your way. It's there to make sure you never get close enough to be hurt. We find safety in our theories because the person is too volatile to handle. We prefer the map because the territory requires us to be lost. The common narrative suggests that women are inherently mysterious, strategically opaque beings whose motives are locked behind a veil of hidden intentions. It is a comforting thought for the male mindset, providing a convenient excuse for failure. But the harsh truth is that this mystery is almost entirely a projection. Women do not conceal their nature. They communicate their inner states with startling consistency through tone, timing, withdrawal, and the subtle shift of attention. Men miss the signal not because it is hidden, but because it does not arrive in the format they have been trained to accept. You are waiting for a specific kind of directness, a verbal confession, a logical bullet point, while the brutal reality is being transmitted in a different register entirely. You classify it as silence or manipulation simply because you lack the frequency to receive it. The discomfort here is structural. If she is not actually hiding, then your confusion is not a lack of information, it is a failure of the filter. You have built a perceptual architecture designed to receive one thing while another is being broadcast. Consider a couple sitting at a dimly lit table. She has become quieter over the course of the hour. The man interprets this through the lens of dark psychology, labeling it as emotional withholding or a tactical game. He begins to scan her face, his eyes darting across her features with a slight, anxious intensity, trying to read the expression. But the signal isn't in her eyes. The camera of the mind should hold on her hands. She has stopped eating. Her posture has shifted 3 degrees away from the center. The communication is absolute and clear. Something fundamental needs to be addressed. Yet he continues to stare at her face, looking for a sign he recognizes, completely oblivious to the one that is already screaming. He responds with pursuit or his own cold withdrawal, reacting to a ghost of his own making while the living signal is ignored. Don't forget to watch till end and subscribe and like for more. This reveals a deeper, more unsettling internal conflict. Men who claim to be frustrated by female mystery are often the most threatened when they encounter a woman who is truly direct and unambiguous. When the mystery is removed, the man is suddenly stripped of his role as the decoder. He can no longer hide behind his theories or his intellectual distance. This suggests that the mystery is not something men want to solve. It is something they need to maintain. As long as she is a puzzle, he is an investigator, a position of silent power and detachment. The moment she is known, he must be known in return. Mystery is not an attribute of the other person. It is a cognitive distance we maintain so that knowing them fully does not require us to change. We find that the confusion you feel is often a choice your nervous system has made for you. It is a psychological buffer, a way of staying in the room while remaining unreachable. You have been using the idea of her complexity to avoid the terrifying simplicity of her presence. The signal was never the problem. The problem is that you are afraid of what would happen if you actually understood it. Before we venture further into the mechanics of what you've built, we must pass through an honest pause. This is not about them. It is about the space between. You have likely stood on both sides of this divide. You know the specific hollow ache of being responded to by someone who isn't actually looking at you. You have felt the frustration of someone reacting to a version of you that doesn't exist. A ghost they've conjured from their own past or their own fears. You know exactly what it feels like to be invisible while standing in plain sight. The brutal reality we must eventually face is that this architecture of distance works in both directions. If you are using a map to navigate her, you must consider the harsh truth that she may be doing the same to you. But perhaps her distance isn't a tactic or a piece of dark psychology. Perhaps it is a reaction to an accurate perception. If she feels unreachable, it may be because she has sensed that you are unreachable too. This is the mirror that most avoid. The male mindset often demands a key to unlock others, while the door to our own interior remains double-bolted. The distance you perceive is rarely a wall she built to keep you out. It is often the echo of the wall you built to keep yourself in. We are rarely as hidden as we think we are, and we are rarely as observant as we claim to be. There is a quiet, hollow center to the pursuit of strategic knowledge. The man who spends his nights decoding behavioral patterns and refining his male mindset through the lens of dark psychology. believes he is building a toolkit for success. But the harsh truth is that this pursuit is not born of confidence. It is a highly organized form of inadequacy. By seeking a system to navigate women, you have already answered a question you haven't admitted you were asking. Am I enough on my own? The system is the scaffolding you build because you have already decided that without it you would fall. This intellectual curiosity is often just the socially acceptable face of fear. You frame it as a study of human nature, but its function is purely protective. If you can understand the mechanism, you cannot be surprised. And in this architecture, being surprised is the ultimate failure. It means being rejected by someone you allowed to matter. Consider the man alone in a quiet room, leaning forward, eyes fixed on a screen. He is reading a thread on attachment theory, or a guide to silent power. To an observer, he looks focused. To the trained eye, he is a soldier cleaning his rifle before a battle he's already lost. This is the image of someone preparing for something they are
afraid of. You've likely felt the fallout of this. You leave an interaction feeling like you performed well. You maintained the frame, you said the right things, you avoided the pitfalls. But hours later, the success feels hollow. It isn't because you failed, it's because you succeeded, and you aren't sure which version of you was actually in the room. If the system won the interaction, then you weren't really there to enjoy it. The brutal reality is that the man who has figured women out is the man most likely to find genuine connection threatening. Connection does not respond to systems. It requires presence. It requires being seen without the armor of your theories. This creates an internal conflict where you view intimacy as a vulnerability to be managed rather than an experience to be had. The need to never lose is itself the wound. A person who cannot afford to lose cannot afford to be present, and a person who is not present cannot be known. This leads to a devastating philosophical realization. If you cannot be known,
you cannot be loved in any way that actually reaches you. You may win the interaction, you may secure the attention, but you remain isolated inside a perfectly correct theory. You must eventually confront the possibility that everything you have learned was designed to keep you safe, and that, in this territory, safety and connection are mutually exclusive. You have built a fortress of understanding, only to find that you are the only one inside it. There is a particular trap waiting for men who engage with content like this. You watch, you recognize yourself, and you feel that recognition as progress. But here is a harsh truth. Insight without behavioral change is the most comfortable form of stagnation available to intelligent people. Often, within hours of watching, the male mindset simply adopts this new psychological awareness as a more sophisticated armor. The man who once used understanding women as his strategy now uses understanding his own projections as his strategy. The vocabulary is more precise, the self-reflection is eloquent, but the brutal reality remains unchanged. The behavior is identical. This is the psychological equivalent of a mirage. It mimics growth so accurately that it is almost impossible to distinguish from the inside. You watch a video about the filters you use to avoid reality, and you feel briefly that you no longer have them. This feeling is itself a projection onto a version of yourself who has already changed in theory, but not in practice. Imagine a man who has done the work. He's read the books, perhaps even sat in therapy, and he enters a new relationship with a sense of silent power. Then, the old patterns activate. He finds himself mid-conversation, performing the very behavior he has spent months analyzing. There is a cinematic, internal distance where he watches himself do it. He can narrate the manipulation or the withdrawal with clinical precision as it happens, but he continues anyway. He is a spectator to his own dysfunction. The woman across from him cannot see his internal monologue. She only sees what he is doing. To her, his awareness is invisible. This reveals the most uncomfortable edge of human behavior. Self-awareness is not self-change. There is a specific kind of man, intelligent, reflective, genuinely curious, for whom awareness has become a substitute for the more frightening work of actually being different. It is easy to be evolved in the abstract. It is terrifying to be present in a specific room with a specific person when your ego is at stake. The philosophical insight we often avoid is that understanding a cage does not open it. It simply makes the bars more interesting to look at. You can map every inch of your prison, name every shadow, and describe the lock in exquisite detail, but you are still inside. The exit is not found through more understanding. It is found through a different kind of action, one that your current level of understanding cannot produce and, more importantly, cannot protect you from. The most dangerous trap for an intelligent person is the one that looks like an awakening. You may finish this video and feel a sense of relief, as if the truth has set you free, but feeling changed is not evidence that anything has changed. The harsh truth is that what you need is not more insight, but the tolerance of not knowing, the willingness to step out from behind your theories and exist in the discomfort of being seen. The discomfort you feel right now isn't the problem. It's the beginning of something real. The silence returns, as it always does. We find ourselves back in that quiet aftermath, standing in the cold air of a conversation that ended correctly on the surface but left you feeling curiously hollow. You know now what was unnamed in that space. It wasn't a secret she was keeping, or a tactic she was employing. It was the weight of your own architecture, the map you held between you like a shield. The question you brought here, what do I need to know about women, was never the question this video was answering. That was merely the socially acceptable frame for a deeper, more unsettling inquiry. As you sit here now, the brutal reality remains. You have spent years studying the lock, assuming the problem was the door, but the door has always been open. You just never dared to walk through it without a weapon in your hand.